Derek Hunter, my dear friend, how are you
Hello,
doing this
hello.
evening?
I'm doing great. I've had lots of tea. It's the last drug I allow myself to have, and it is something that I thoroughly enjoy, and have had plenty of it all day long, and just had drinking some right now. So I'm rolling on a hot tea high right now. I'm feeling great.
So was that sardonic, or do you consider tea a drug? Is that caffeine basically is
Well,
what you're
yeah,
talking about? Yeah.
the caffeine that's in the tea is, that's the drug that I allow myself to
Is
be.
there a want to be naked of all of that?
Not at this point in my life, no.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
You can
really
allow
attached.
some.
Yeah, I'm really attached to hot tea.
Yeah.
It was it's something basically for the last year that I've had, because I have had issues with my stomach, with heartburn and stuff, acid reflux, and so I my previous favorite thing was coffee, and coffee really messes my stomach up, and I was really going through it because I realized I had to stop drinking hot coffee. And then I discovered last year that I actually really enjoy and love black tea, and
Yeah.
it was a really nice kind of um, a newfound romantic relationship that I now have with hot tea.
When I had the privilege of, meeting you in the flesh in Los Angeles, you
Yeah.
were at the beginning of transitioning from, obviously you were abstaining from, alcohols and, controlled substances, but you were in the process of really configuring your guttural flora and,
Uh huh.
figuring out what to eat and stuff. And I always wondered if it would come to a militant, need to be absolutely natural in the sense that, there would be no caffeine eventually, or there would be no,
Sure. Sure.
yeah.
I've considered that, but at this point, because tea doesn't seem is has not been causing me any problems. It it's sort of like the last remaining crutch that I allow myself to have in life.
I was
Um,
gonna say if you yeah, if you were militantly against tea, you know, that's kind of the least of your worries,
right?
But
Yeah. It's yeah. It certainly has. If it's to be a guilty pleasure, I mean, certainly it's a very non-harmful guilty pleasure.
well, Derek, I'm very privileged to talk with you, especially this being kind of one of your first, you were saying earlier, like actual video live streams. And you know,
Right.
we
Right.
we were
The-
talking about the mechanics or the minutia of what a live stream is, and having to be accountable, for whatever spills out of you. And the thing I take from you and your work is very much that. It's very much an accountability. It's very much a vulnerability, and it's very much a culmination of your lives transgressions, but also what you do, as a human being at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, you're one of the few that actually walks the talk. And I've always really appreciated that about you. Could you talk a little bit what you do for a living?
Sure. Sure. And thank you for saying that. It's something that I think it's really important to understand that, like, being phony or being untrue or being unreal is something that is always present. And I think that, for me, the pursuit of being genuine and being authentic is something that has been very important to me. Um, but I also know that I'm not with far away from the parameters of being inauthentic at times. And just like we all can be, we all can be phony, we can all be inauthentic. And but I think the pursuit of that is really important, in really being present in as much as possible with the people that I'm around, whether it be online right now with you, or at my job. So, I got into the helping field as a drug and alcohol counselor, because of my own issues with addiction to hard substances and with alcohol. And I realized that if I was going to abstain from these things, because I realized after a number of years that I had to, that one of the ways, not the only, certainly not the only way, but one of the ways that would really help me to remain sober and live a life of abstinence from hard drugs and alcohol was to help other people who are struggling with the same issues. So I got into that, went back to school for a couple of years, took classes on group dynamics and psychology and drug and alcohol, substance abuse, and then eventually, started working in the field as an intern and got paid for it. And then eventually, come as August 1st, will be my third year anniversary working for the Amity Foundation, which is a great organization that's been around since 1969, and is what is their modality is called a teaching and therapeutic community. And one of the great ironies that I found myself in when I first started working there was that the word community to me I was very hostile to that word, and I was very hostile to that because to me community represented oppression of some kind, because I was very individualistic, and I still am very individualistic. But one of the things I realized in my own, you know, personal growth was that I had to allow myself to be held accountable, not only by myself but by other people. That I had to be responsible for myself, and that I was part of something else too that was bigger than myself. And that really, really has helped me tremendously in my personal issues. So for me, you know, a lot of what really, in order to be, I think an effective counselor, there's a lot of different things that have to, go into place. And so for my current job, which is for the Amity Foundation, we help guys coming out of prison who are, and specifically the guys that I help are guys who are still technically incarcerated, and they have ankle monitors on. So they are part of a program where they stay with us and receive treatment. And before the coronavirus situation happened, they were allowed to go out and get jobs and save money, because normally when people leave prison, at the gate they're given $200 gate money, and basically wish you luck. And then that's the reason why a lot of guys, they go straight to the street and they go back to what they know, and usually within 24 48 hours they're back doing what they did before. And so there's no time really for them to acclimate themselves into society, work on their issues with violence, with drug addiction, their issues with communication, with resentments and things like that. And so in order for me to help these guys live a happier life, it's really important that I focus on my own well-being and my own, emotional center. And so and one of the things, like, I'm not called a counselor, I'm called a demonstrator. And so I'm supposed to demonstrate behaviors and thinking and ways of being, which these guys are not called inmates, they're not called clients, they're called students.
Right.
And
That inherently implies a responsibility, to be kind of like a paragon for what you're talking about, a demonstrator.
right,
And yeah,
yeah, exactly. You have to actually live and breathe what you're preaching. It's not just about telling people what to do. You have to actually do it. And I really identified with it. This is why um, I'm quite happy working for this organization. The people who created it and who are still in charge of it, my supervisors, coworkers. It. My ideal would be to make a living with my writing, of course, with Love Chaos. But I'm very realistic. I'm a very pragmatic and practical person,
mhm.
um, and I'm quite fine with that never being the case, and being fine with working for organizations like the Amity Foundation, because in that process of working in that field, I'm able to live out the philosophy of Love Chaos.
I was gonna say I mean, also just a really quick side tangent. Today, the word community as a a triggering kind of euphemism for something negative has come up a lot, and especially in the last stream I did, and it's been kind of a continuous joke. It's called the C word,
Yeah.
and this is one of, I think now it's the time that I'm going to listen to this synchronicity and reconsider my use of it, because
Uh-huh.
everyone else has this really deep connection to kind of the autonomous, or how do I put it? Not autonomous, actually quite the opposite, automaton type configuration of the word. So I thought that was really interesting. But what I really wanted to ask you is, like, was there a certain event, and there's, I'm not looking for a right answer, but there's a way that I'm kind of surveying this from people that have, kind of pushed through the big transgressions of habit and toward lifestyles. Was there a certain event that clicked it? Was there like a certain situation that kind of woke you up?
Yeah.
There
I
was.
Yeah, there was. I would say it wasn't something that happened. My the click, or my sort of like the light turning on, it
Mm,
it didn't happen at the time I was experiencing the situation. It was sometime afterwards when I was reflecting on it and looking back on it. And what it
right.
was, yeah, it was definitely, it was, I don't remember how much into the future it was. I don't know when it happened, but there was one event that basically was the thing that made me realize that I had a serious problem. And it was actually,
So haunting. You had to, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
What?
yeah, yeah,
I was just, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say that I'm surveying this because I think that the idea that folks that are in this turmoil, they always talk about, hitting rock bottom, or, there's that comedian who says, oh, there's that, you wake up next to a goat and you stop drinking. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, there's this idea that there's this event that changes you, and I think honestly, I think that's a dangerous thing to expect when you're going through the turmoil.
Oh,
I don't
sure,
think there
right.
has to be, and there probably won't be if you're lucky enough to maneuver through it for a long time, right? So I always wonder for people that have, pushed through those transgressions, if they can solidify a certain event or a certain, situation that really, push them forward. But, you saying that it was like a haunting memory that kind of stayed with you, and it took
Yeah,
it took time, right? It took
it
time
took
before you're
time.
like, yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't right away. I think what's really important too is not necessarily like how intense the experience is. It's more about how it affects you.
right.
So, there's plenty of people, and I'm working with people, who've done horrible things or have had horrible things done to them, and they don't change. So it's like they could kill someone, or someone close to them dies, or they spend decades in prison and they still haven't changed their way of thinking or acting. So it's
Mm.
not, I don't think it should be dependent on the intensity of the experience. It's more about how that experience affects you.
Has
you know
this kind of changed your, is there an absolute kind of idea? I know, knowing you, there really isn't an absolute. I think you're very prime agnostic with a lot of things. You allow a lot of doubt and other things to help you. But I wonder if, like, your work with these people in that caliber, people that have caused a bunch of, or murdered someone, and then just uses, the punishment, to be pissed off to go do it again. Like,
Right.
has that changed your idea of humanity? Do you think that people can can change, or do you think that there's just something inherent that we actually have to, like, maneuver against to change?
Oh no, I think what's great about working in the field that I do work in is that I see change happen firsthand.
Right.
It is totally, you know, I think what's really, what really is great about working as a counselor and helping people is, I think so oftentimes a lot of times people get burnt out. And I'm actually here. I'm nearing the point where people are supposed to get really burnt out year 5.
Oh wow, that's a long time.
And so yeah, and I could see why people do. And I think it's because the majority of times people relapse. People fall back to old behaviors and old ways of being. So like the majority of times that's what happens. But that's not like all the time. And I also think, what does help having an agnostic point of view on life, and having a sort of seeing view and viewing life in a non-absolutist kind of way, is that even for those people, you know, there was a guy who early on in my time at Amity, he was actually a student for another demonstrator, and I did a few circles with him, group work with him, had some conversations with him, and he was, a longtime gang member, and he had spent a lot of years in prison, and I had some really great conversations with him, and he was someone who was not, I would say, my favorite person I interacted with. There were certain things about him that kind of bothered me, but there was moments where I really saw some humanity come through, and not too long after, I think about a year after he got released from us, he actually went into a bowling alley, got into some argument with somebody, pulled out a gun and blew away and killed a bunch of people, you know. He was in the news here locally, and there was some attention that was put on us and some blame, and they actually blamed the wrong counselor. They had this lady's name, and it was like, wait, that wasn't his counselor, um
Yeah.
but so I would say, though, I really feel like, I don't know, like when so often for people who know about recovery, who know about the 12 steps, about people going in and out of treatments and rehabs and stuff. And um, there, there's this kind of, and can be true of a lot of things in society, where there's this kind of this emphasis placed on, like, if the person doesn't have uh, um, complete sobriety for the rest of their life and complete abstinence for the rest of their life, does not commit any crimes, is just this perfect saint basically. If they're not that, then they're a failure. And I and I, you know and I think that's really just like just a really wrong way of looking at our society, because it just puts really unrealistic expectations on people, and on situations in our society, and we're not really viewing things in how I think it really works.
Right.
So
It's very absolutist.
yeah, so like, so for this one guy, for example, was his life a failure? Well, certainly, after spending all those years in prison and then coming to us and spending a year with us and seemingly getting better, and then going out a year later and then killing a bunch of people in a bowling alley, it's, certainly that is a failure in a way. But at the same time, I would say, like, if you look at his whole life and you look at the things that he did experience, and certainly some of the conversations that I had with him, uh, which I enjoyed, and I could see a real humanity in the guy. Um, and he's just one of many where I encounter a lot of these guys, and then, yeah, sad to hear, some of them will go and go back to old ways of being not too long after being with us. But I really I don't know, I don't think that's a failure on our part or on society's part or on the
Right.
individual's part. It
It's
just
as simple too as like a year after years in prison, a year of transition isn't good enough, you know?
right.
Probably. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I think this is part and parcel to, your your philosophy of life. And this is, what love chaos is. And this brings us very conveniently, to your new book and the metaphysical philosophy that you purvey is, I think, not only like in debt to your life and pushing through those transgressions, but moving into helping people through it. And I was this is the boring question, but I was hoping that you could, talk a little bit about what love chaos is to people that don't know.
Sure. Yeah. It's so it should be understood that love chaos is something that is open to everyone, and there's just a few guiding principles that are sort of required. There's a lot of freedom to be to that people can do, and and even if people just want to take things here and there, and it's like, well, that's interesting, and I like that, and somehow finds a way for it to affect a person's life, makes a person think in a different way. you know um, I'm not looking to get tons of followers to sign up to anything. There's no like, I'm really not looking to make money off of it. It's not something I'm really doing to try to, I'm not like a new L. Ron Hubbard or something trying to start Scientology or something,
Right. It's not a movement in the way that you need other people to subscribe or anything. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I'm not really, it's just that, for me, for so long, I've been looking for something in life that could kind of give me some guidance. And I've gone through a lot of different phases. I was even a Christian for a couple years, from like the age of 19 to 20. And then I was, doing other things as well. And um, agnosticism has always kind of like been something that has really appealed to me and made sense to me. And it was something my biological father, was an agnostic. And so for the last 9 years of his life, uh, he died in 2005, the same year that my son was born. We had a really close relationship, and he really showed me how a life of doubt. He actually, in the last play he wrote, he was one of those people who was really great about talking about his ideas, but would never put them to paper. And so I was always pushing. I'm like kind of the opposite. It's like I have to produce things. I have to see things to their end. So he actually came up with an idea for a religion, and he called it the Church of Many Doubts. And so it's in his last play, and on on the Love Chaos website, there's a page dedicated to him. It's called JWD, which stands initials for his name, John Wisdom Dancer. And in large part, I'd have to say that he's one of the biggest influences on Love Chaos, because in many ways that's what Love Chaos is about. He was a very loving and compassionate person, so love was very important to him. But the basic premise of Love Chaos is that it views life, existence, the nature of the universe is inherently chaotic. It's inherently unpredictable, and for good, for bad, and for neutral. And it's not, Love Chaos doesn't see chaos as inherently like bad. And usually people, when they refer to chaos, is it's something that's bad, it's destructive. And in this philosophy, it doesn't view it as inherently bad. It can be, and it's also not, it's not inherently good either. It's just that it is what it is. And it kind of, it's something that, like when you think you have like something within your grips and you've got it really tightly, and then it just finds ways to slip out through your fingers in terms of you understanding something. That to me is what life is that we
Right.
are, we're constantly going through experiences and having the rug pulled from under our feet. And I don't think that's always bad. It can be painful, it can be torturous. But I think what can help is living a life where you are working with that. And the best way for me to work with that is with love, is living your life being motivated by love for other people, for yourself. And that
But
is,
also literally loving chaos, like allowing it to you give it credence in a way that it was you would automatically just deter from or something. I always took from it that it's very like it's passionate about the hardships too. It's passionate about the you know that old adage that uh, life happens when you're making plans, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely does. I think, yes, certainly loving chaos is it's sort of basically loving life is how
Right.
I would say it, and so that's the basic premise, to love chaos. And from there, there's like three steps. There's, love chaos in people's daily lives. Like, how do you live a life of love chaos in a daily basis? And then there's psychological tools, which are very simple. Really, if people read the books, they'll see that what I'm putting forth is something really anyone can understand and practice.
I think
And
that's why I love it so much. It's got a very simplistic tenor about it, or timbre, and it's not pompous or overwrought with vernacular or academia. It's very much for communing with like the simplest language of the self. You know, it's
yeah, it's something that that was my goal. I think even
yeah.
from the beginning, even from 2014 when it first started, that was my goal, was to create something that was simple. Um, and Maybe it's because with my writing and fiction, I write I write stories that are explore very surreal terrain. They're based in reality, on relationships and earthy experiences, but there's a lot of I subvert language, and I go out there, and it goes into weird places. And I for a number of reasons, with my nonfiction work, I wanted it to be the opposite. I wanted
Right.
it to be just very straightforward.
This
And it's also too, just there's so much in the occult that I love. And Aleister Crowley and Austin Osman Spare are heroes of mine, and but they both are really hard to understand.
Well, yeah,
And
absolutely.
Yeah, and I found that there's a lot in the occult that is that way. Kenneth Grant is just really difficult to understand, and
Yeah.
and fortunately with chaos magic that became more straightforward. I think, and that's what appealed
Maybe
to
a
me.
little too straightforward.
Yeah, yeah, maybe so. Definitely, definitely.
But so okay, so you published the first book, Love Chaos, and it was more of like a testament to what it is, and like you were saying, the how to implement it in your kind of daily, or like how it's how would it put it? It was more of like a grand summary of the idea. The second book, Love Chaos and Theory and Practice, was how to implement it. And then
Yeah,
here we are with the grimoire, uh the end of the world, the Love Chaos grimoire for the survival and evolution of human beings. So what I'm interested in, I always knew that you were working on the third book, and before COVID happened, before 2020 punched us in the gut, like
right.
where did this idea for the end of the world come in? Like how why make it so not dramatic is not the right word, but why choose to use that term?
Well, I really think it comes back to being a father,
Yeah.
and this was so. I think if people can remember back to last year, the climate change situation has been something that's been pretty dire for a while. It's not anything new, but certainly last year we were sort of with Greta Thunberg and a lot of other people just coming out and being really vocal in their and voicing like, hey, this could be it. Like, hey,
Right.
we do need to do something about this. Um, that to me was like, you know, uh, in being a father, and like, hey, like here's this young woman or girl, teenager who's going around the world and voicing her opinion, who's around the same age as my son, and just thinking like, what is going to be in my son's future, and in his generation's future, and his kids' future, and I've always felt like magic is something that can really have enormous possibilities. And I've always, as I write in the book, for the last 10 years, my magical practice has been focused on me. And it's been focused on me getting better, me getting over my addiction to hard drugs and alcohol, to cigarettes, working on my issues, working on my writing. It's always been revolved around me. And I think that's great. I think that magic can be used for that. And I think that it should be used for individual betterment, whether that's psychological or personal or transcendent, working with deities. However it is, I think that's really valuable. But after 10 years of that, and after sort of like this current, the last 5-10 years or so of this sort of grimoire revival, which for a while just didn't appeal to me, and I also talk about it in the book. Like my first sort of coming across it was, the Key of Solomon,
Right.
and translated by Mathers and edited by Crowley. And I was influenced by their perspective on it as being kind of lowly, and then coming across it in other areas, just certain things about it just didn't appeal to me. But then just over the years, just feeling like, well, what if we could interact with spirits and ask them to do things, but not ask them to do, find a treasure for me, or make this girl fall in love with me, or put a curse on this person, or whatever other thing that I just constantly seem to see what grimoires are used for, which, certainly I think there's a space for that. And I think that if people want to do those things, that's fine. But the obsession with like these goals, asking spirits to do things that to me seem very in the scope
Trivial.
of, yeah, kind of trivial, and like, well, if we're working with these beings that to me, are higher dimensional beings who are operating in a field that it really does transcend our capacity to understand existence, why not ask them to do bigger things? Why not
Yeah.
ask them, like, why not ask them to do something like, hey, let's find a way to survive. Let's find a way to evolve. Um, because, and I since my teens, I have really felt strongly that, again, like being agnostic, I take into the consideration that it just could be completely in our heads, but that there's something there that's communicating to us, spirits or whatnot. There's another reality there that's operating, that maybe can be explained in materialist ways too. Maybe it's not spiritual, but there's something that's communicating to us. And I've always felt like, as a writer, it's really important to open up our ears to those voices and to put them to paper. So when I turned to this ritual, I turned it in a way where I would do a number of things I've never done before, but I would turn to it in a way that I was somewhat used to, ever since my teens, as being an artist and opening myself up to this other realm. And that's sort of how it started. Was just, why not? And like I never done a ritual this for 6 days straight. I never done a ritual, for that long, and involving a number of things. And so it was something that sort of the beginning of it was just realizing I wanted to do a ritual that was for something bigger than myself, something that would benefit my son, and his future, and also, why not for something big, like making sure that human beings survive, because I really feel that we have just touched the surface of things, and human beings have a lot more to explore.
I always understood it too. When I saw the end of the world, I almost immediately, knowing Love Chaos and the past couple of books you released and how much we've talked about it, I immediately thought of an internal end to a succession of bad choices, or uh,
Uh,
uh confusing and crooked pathways away from maybe your intent or whatever. And it made me think of like the end of the world as you know it, and I feel fine kind of thing.
right. Yeah.
you know but like it's yeah, to me it's always been, at the worst and maybe the base standard of magic, at the most, like, just trivial nomenclature, it's a great way to commune with your subconscious, which that alone is a great practice. If you're
Right.
actually communing with other deities and everything, that's a plus. That's great. But in its
Right.
most basic form, like just the psychological aid that prayer gives, that ritual gives, that ceremony gives, that you know for once kind of it's not a victimhood, but it's more of an appeasement or a surrender to to something outside of yourself. That's why I've been talking so much about brain chemistry, is that.
Uh-huh.
And but the great thing about and it's called a grimoire too, and I wanted to talk about this. When I had first read the book, I was my initial reaction was taken aback because I hope this isn't a spoiler alert, but this is not a how to. This is not a how to do rituals to find blah 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 blah. And I had come across, I was on a recent program where I was being accosted with questions about how to do the things I was doing to be where I was. And my absolute reaction was like, don't fucking listen to me. Like, I don't want to tell you what to do because I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. So I think it's really fascinating that you composed a grimoire, and it's I think what the machinations of people think what a grimoire is missing from it.
Right.
And could you talk a little bit about why you kept that out of there?
Sure. Well, my original intention was not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
My original intention was to do now. Okay, here we go on day one. This is what I did, and this is what you should do, and this
Right.
is what happened, and then so I started writing the book that way, and I talk about this in the book too. So uh, I I feel very strongly that again, if spirits do exist, and um, and I do have this belief, right? Well, being agnostic as much of a belief as I can have, that I have this what I call a higher dimensional being. It's like my conscience. The
A
12 steppers would,
supra self.
yeah, it's like what the 12 steppers would call a higher power. There's a holy daemon, all these other terms, holy guardian angel. It's this thing that is like speaks to me, and I feel like everyone has it. It's our conscious. It speaks to us through our gut, and if we pay attention to it, I think we can hear its message pretty clear. And as I was writing the steps, and I was writing page after page of what I did, what happened for each day, and as I was writing more and more, and I was writing a lot, right? Um, Something kept on telling me not to do this. Something kept on telling me that this was wrong. That what I was doing, it was something that was exposing something that was very intimate. And it was bizarre to me at first because this was a ritual that wasn't just for me, it was for something way beyond me. So I thought, well, this is horseshit. Like, why would I be hearing this voice? It must be a voice that's trying to fuck with me. And so uh, I had a number of issues too, because originally I was also planning on making it a big book. Like I have a big book that's like 8.5 by 11. It's called Black, and it's got full color paintings on the inside by my mentor and friend Eric Fiazzi. Beautiful paintings by him, and I really love the way that they're inside those books, and it really helps those books tremendously. And his art is on the covers to all my books and are on my website and so forth. And I was planning on having his paintings that he did before I did the ritual be something that would be accompany the words that were spoken to me by these spirits that I conjured up. And so these paintings would represent these spirits that I worked with. And so I was planning on doing that, and I spent just a lot of time. And it was during a 3-week period where I couldn't go to work because I had coronavirus symptoms. So I was working. I was basically every single day for those 3 weeks working on the book, writing it, and also working on the formatting of it. and I kept on running into problems with trying to include the paintings, the sigils. I did so I think probably close to 100 sigils in total for the whole thing. I spent a lot of time on the sigils, and so I did it and in black ink and also in red ink in the book that I used to write the words that were spoken to me. Um, so I was working on it, and so as I was kept on working on it, and I kept on hearing this voice to not give out the details of the ritual. Uh, Over time, I started to really consider that maybe there was something that was speaking to me that I should listen to, and so I thought about it, and I thought, well, then this might be something that's telling me that I really should pay attention to this voice, and I was trying to wonder, well, why, and and I realized that like I call this book a call to action, and it's something that I really hope does help want to have people do rituals that would help human beings survive. And I really felt like if I were to put out all the details of every single thing that I did, or even an outline of the things that I did, um, I think it would be, to me, it would take away um, from encouraging people to do it their way. Because to be honest, like real, true, really effective magic has to be individualized. To me, it cannot be copied. You cannot do it the way someone else can. We can learn from other people, and we can certainly understand things, and it can help us tremendously how people do things. But whenever I've read books on occult rituals, everything that has always informed my work or helped me the most was not the details of what Crowley did, or what Austin Spare did, or Phil Carroll, or Phil Hine, or Peter Carroll, or who God knows who else. It wasn't exact like the details of what they did that really influenced me. It was their whole way of being, how they viewed life, and how their view of life informed their work, and how their magical practice became a part of who they were. It wasn't just some exercise like, here I'm going to go to yoga class, and here we go, we're going to do this position and that position and this position.
Right, just paying a toll or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think that really the mechanics of a ritual are important, but you have to figure out which mechanics work for you. And
Well, this
yeah,
is the beauty that the book transformed in me, because I think grimoire is such it's a loaded word for us, practitioners or whatever. So we
right, right,
automatically kind of assume what it is, but after reading it and coming across this beautiful excerpt, even there's a chapter that says rituals, and then there's your paragraph going, I'm listening to my gut and not putting these in here. That's when the book truly transformed to me, and it kind of transcended the idea of just a typical grimoire. It was like, no, this is a celebration of someone really intentfully and passionately, like, putting all of these beautiful ingredients and meaning behind every part, every parcel of what they're doing. And I think that's the message.
right,
you know the message is that, yeah, you have to imbue so much of your own self in a ceremonial setting, or to create this magnanimous meaningfulness. And I really, yeah,
exactly.
I loved that transition, that light punching the back of my eyes, going, holy shit, he just deconstructed a grimoire. I was like, all right, now I get the book. But
Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's an absolute celebration, and the minutia and the yeah, just the sheer intent of just the ingredients, like not even the dance or the ceremony, but just what all comes before that, and
right.
it's beautiful, and it's very artistic in the sense that I think you transpose that to other works of art you do. I think a lot of us do, and like that's easy to translate, and how cool it is to read how somebody else imbues their ingredients in their art. So Yeah.
It reminded me of like that kind of experience of listening to this voice and telling me don't write about this, right? It reminded me of times when I would write about personal experiences, relationships I had, either romantic relationships or with friends or family. And a lot of my fiction is very personal, and I really do bear a lot. Like I talk about some pretty painful experiences in my life and for other people, and so I do bear my soul a lot. I really value people that do it. It's one of the things that I love about you so much, and I think that that's really valuable. But there have been times where I could hear a voice telling me, "You know what, Derek, don't write about that." You know, um, and it's for someone like myself, my initial sort of thing that tells me is to just let everything out of the bag, everything that's inside me, everything that I've gone through, just let it all out.
I was
And
gonna say it may take a while before I hear the voice saying not to do that, you know.
yeah, but I think that's been part of my for me, part of what has helped me tremendously recently is to be able to monitor some things that my what I think is my gut is telling me to express or to share. But if I listen carefully, there are times where it's like, well, no, it's better not to share that. Certain things have a value to them in just being secret, and that and it was really painful because there was some things that happened in those 6 days that I want to share with people, like they're just like they were mind blowing, and it was really hard, it was really difficult, but it was like this commitment. It's like, and I think that's really important for people to understand is that we do have a relationship with these entities, whether they exist or not, whether they're in our heads or not. And I think if you can make a commitment to these entities, um, and is sincere and is genuine, and you're loyal to them, I think that you start to see how that can benefit you. And I think early on in my occult practice, I didn't see that. I didn't see the
Mm.
value of that, and whenever I would read about that or hear about that, of keeping certain things secret, I thought that there was some ulterior motives involved. I thought it was people in positions of power wanting to hold on to power. But in
Or
recent
just
years,
straight half-assing, you know.
yeah, I start to see that there's actually more to it than just people holding on to power. That sometimes secrets are valuable on a personal level.
On a
Um,
personal level, yeah, absolutely. That's really profound considering that I think there's this like ongoing dismantling. I mean, I think even maybe you're a part of it, or at least the idea of the occult being some secret society or cabal that, some initiatory process or, gang of or gaggle of goofs, as I've said,
well,
you
yeah,
know.
certainly, I think that recent modern occult practices are a sort of a dismantling of that.
Right.
I mean, we're really part of. Probably you could go back to the late 1800s. Certainly, Aleister Crowley was big in terms of making things secret public,
Right.
and I think that we're all kind of inheritors of that. Chaos magic obviously is very much so, and right now, I mean, it's just so many people practicing whether it's witchcraft or magic, and it's becoming out there. There's like TikTok witches, I think now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard that story. I was so late to that and just completely an idiot giving my opinion on Twitter about what I ascertained was going on.
Uh,
I'm like, yeah, fucking hex the moon. It'll be all right. Who gives a shit?
yeah.
It's not going to affect anything. It was more, I think, and this is part and parcel to what we're talking about. Using this as an example, it was the backlash that these like quote unquote baby witches got for hexing the moon. And then I saw Instagram comments going, and you wonder why the world is fucked. Oh, and you wonder why blah blah blah. I was like, are you really giving that power? This is insane. Like,
Right.
and I think
Yeah.
that's when currents disrupt. That's when people put too much stock and the agenda or the academia of a current, and think that it actually, that gives it weight enough to blame or to be a victim of, you know.
Right, right. Well, we certainly live in a very blame culture, you know,
Yeah.
and sometimes there is some validity to the blame too, for sure. You know, I think.
So
Uh,
when do you think that comes in though? When it comes to magic, when do you think? And I talk about this with a lot of people, like the hex. Like what is your idea of the hex or hexing?
well, one, you know, as you know, I've talked to you before about I think highly of the Scarlets, the couple that do the publishing company, Scarlet Imprint.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, Peter Gray and Alcestis Demetch, and um, and I have some differences in terms of my philosophy and the way I do things from them, but certainly they both have been huge influences on me and many others, and you know, not only with their own writing but other books that they publish. But one of the things that I liked about Peter Gray, reading about him like years ago, was he had this. It's in the Brazen Vessel, but this essay called "Rewilding Witchcraft," and it talks about how been a problem mostly because of the Wicca is being like, you know, do no harm, like you know, you can do whatever you want, but just don't do any harm to anyone. And so and he was kind of like, you know, farting at that and saying, you know, that's bullshit. You know, like, you know, there's nothing. We have to be strong, and we have to be if we have
Defensive. Yeah.
yeah, we shouldn't be, you know, pussies, you know. And so I like that. I like that stance, and I think that is something that I feel strongly about too. Like, we shouldn't try, if we're practicing magic, if we're occult practitioners or witches or whatever we want to call ourselves, we shouldn't be trying to be accepted by other religions. And I agree with Peter Gray on that. Like, there's a problem with the pagan community or the Wicca community and trying too hard to fit in with other religions, you know.
Especially
And
the eye for an eye adage and yeah, all that. Yeah.
no, I mean, like, in terms of like, so like this, you know, saying, trying to put forth that, hey, what we do is really sweet and innocent, and
Right. Okay.
there's no harm in it, you know, like we're really just not, we're really nice people and blah blah blah.
We're the
And,
protagonists of history. Yeah.
right, or that, you know, sure. Um, so I definitely am with people on that end who want to continue to make the occult or magic or witchcraft um, edgy and basically something of the outsider, that we don't have to be accepted.
Yes.
You know,
Amen.
and so then if that means then having a strong stance and saying, having within our practice the capacity to do harm to other people, I think that, you know, for me, I like to focus on love and for other people as much as possible. But I'm not a believer in turning the other
Turning
cheek
the other
either.
cheek. Yeah. I was gonna say.
Yeah, and so so but so as far as hexing goes, you know, I don't really feel like it's necessary to put a curse on someone or hex someone. I think that's like a lot of wasted energy.
I
At the
think,
same,
you know, oh,
yeah.
sorry. You go ahead.
Well, just real quick to wrap it up for this, I think there are ways, and it's primarily psychological,
Yes.
where we can deal with negative influences, stand up for ourselves, and uh, put a certain intent, uh, not necessarily to do harm to another people, but to let them know, don't fuck with me, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that, you know, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. But to go and do a whole ritual, where you're putting a lot of time and energy and attention on doing a hex or doing a curse on people, I honestly think is a waste of time. And I think that people should find other ways to, if you're having problems with people or if people are bothering you, just find other ways to deal with them.
Just punch him in the jaw. That's what I
Right, there
say.
you go.
No, but like I truly believe that there are, the psychological ramifications of thinking and putting forth all your will and effort through all this pomp and ceremony to conform or disrupt the will of somebody else is like hex enough. Like
It, yeah.
you are maddened, like you've succumbed. Like this person is living rent free in your brain, kind of thing.
It's someone that needs to work on their issues with resentment.
Right. Yeah. I
I
mean
mean,
that
honestly,
that's
it,
not to say that I agree with you. I think there is a time when if there's a caliber of knowledge that a person works with, metaphysical tools and stuff, yeah, there's a caliber to defend yourself, or at least, you know I don't know, protect from their fucking negative juju.
it reminds me a lot of like the guys that I work with who are very strong, tough guys, but they're also very insecure. And
Right.
they're not constantly, they often will tell me, well, Derek, if someone says something to me that calls me a bitch, you know, I can
Then I
fucking
gotta
kick their,
kill them. Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna kick their ass or something, right? And I feel like, and I tell them, I say, look, honestly, like I understand there may be times you're in an environment where there may be rival gangs that are going to test you, and I understand that, right? And that's a really difficult situation to be in, and
Yeah.
you're trying to get away from that lifestyle, right? So certainly they are confronted with guys testing their manhood a lot more than I do by far. But at the same time, and I just know this from working with them and working with people who've been in this for decades, that the vast majority of time, you don't have to resort to violence,
Right.
like 99% of the time. And so I think personally, it is the same with witchcraft or with the occult practice. The vast majority of time, you don't have to resort to hexing. You don't have to resort to putting a curse on someone. You can find other ways to deal with it. If you have to confront the person and communicate with them as a grown up, as someone who's mature, that's really the best way to deal with it. And then if you need to deal, if a person needs to deal with their own issues of resentment, they need to do that, you know?
Well, there's that, Viktor Frankl thing about, enlightenment is the true measurement of enlightenment is how one reacts, right? And it's like, to me, that might be an ingrained hex. Like you were ingrained with this machismo or this bravado that is gonna just fuck your life up caring about it. That's a hex you gotta X hex, like
Right, right.
it's just gonna get you
Definitely.
in trouble.
That you actually bring up a great point is that a lot of times the worst sort of curses or hexes that we can have on ourselves are the belief systems that we carry around with us.
Right. So, and with that said, love chaos can work in conjunction. Like you said, it doesn't sublimate a belief system. It actually kind of really works in Congress.
Yes.
Whatever spiritual practice you have, and it doesn't matter. Do you find a lot of pushback from more theological or devouts, I should say, explaining that they can kind of dalliance with this heretical nonsense?
Uh, well, it's certainly, you know, uh, uh, it definitely, I think it really is. There's a lot of things I don't like about modern times, but one of the things is that we can kind of believe whatever we want, and we live in a time where people can choose to identify themselves as however they want, and they can believe whatever they want as long as they're not doing harm to other people. So one of the things that has benefited me in creating Love Chaos at this time is that even when people really disagree with what I'm trying to do, they kind of hold themselves back because they realize that that's not the accepted way of being these days.
Mm.
Like, the accepted way of being these days is to be like, oh, well, that's your thing, because I'm not trying to convert other people.
Right.
So they know that. And I'm very understanding of other people's belief systems. So, uh, there have been people who have reacted in a negative way for sure. But I think for the most part, I've been quite surprised that most people, it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Other people get into it deeper, but I really haven't had like truly violent reactions to it.
So, and you're actually implementing it. You had told me earlier today that it's there's the love chaos dialogues, which we have actually had on our last interview.
Right,
We did one, recorded and put it on Patreon or whatever.
right.
Like, how is that going? What is that morphing into? Like, what do you mean
Yeah.
to do with it?
Well, so yeah, that definitely is morphing into well something that I was planning on doing anyway a long time ago. And so I really find a lot of value in what's in group work, and I like one-on-ones, like the dialogues have been great, and a lot of times I think that it can happen in ways where you're not expecting it to happen. That's really where they benefit. But I wanted to do something where it's more structured and with more and multiple people. And so in the book that came out last year, Love, Chaos, and Theory and Practice, in the second chapter, I discuss two different formats for group work. And this is something that I'm going to be doing on Zoom starting in August. And they're peer to peer, which means that you know, so I'll be facilitating these meetings online, but it's not. I'm not doing it from the perspective of a professional. I am not charging people for it. I am not saying that I have a PhD in this, that, whatever. I have quite a bit of experience in group work as a professional and in my personal life,
You don't
but
have a PhD in energy medicine?
no, no. One of the things that I really valued about the 12 steps, and also an alternative to the 12 steps, which I participate in, which is called SOS, Secular Organizations for Sobriety, which is for everyone, but it's a place where people who are either atheists or agnostic can be comfortable in. Because the 12 steps is a spiritual program. However you want to look at it, you have to be spiritual. So SOS is an alternative to that, and there's other ones too. Refuge Recovery, which is a Buddhist form, Smart Recovery, which is another secular organization. And so I've done all these and other ones, and I've really enjoyed them, and they're all peer to peer. So they're all, you know, basically people struggling with issues, mostly addiction, helping out other people who are struggling with the same issues. And with these love chaos groups, there's two different kinds. There's one called love chaos catharsis, and where there's no feedback, people get to express themselves without feedback. And there's love chaos dialogues. So we've had dialogues, and I've done dialogues a number of times with people. It was just one-on-ones, but these are dialogues in group work, and the dialogues encourage feedback and people to have a back and forth. So there'd be two different kinds of groups, and so there, so there's a real magic that happens when you have a group of people working together, and I benefited tremendously from a professional therapist. I had these two ladies who helped me early on in my sobriety and my recovery, and they actually were not drug and alcohol counselors, but it didn't matter. They just helped me tremendously. There's real value to professional help, and these meetings do not mean to substitute professional help, but from my own experiences and from millions of other people's experiences in peer-to-peer groups, there is real value in one human being helping out another human being, and that they're on equal footing, and that some may have more experience and more knowledge and more understanding, can be more helpful than others, but where people can grow together in a group dynamic. So I'm going to be starting those in August on Zoom, and looking very forward to that. And it's something that they're different than any other peer-to-peer group as well, which is why I'm doing them.
And these are like intended to be a bit more metaphysically open-minded too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
the SOS is like, yeah, you're spiritual and stuff, but it's not really a huge, no, I don't want to say crux. That has like a negative connotation. It's not too involved with the spiritual aspect. It's more of just
right,
you're allowed to be whatever. So in my mind, love chaos would be more of an open platform for people struggling and needing just some vexing uh with the opportunity to kind of talk openly about these
right.
metaphysical avenues. Yeah.
It'll be, yes, it'll be open to a lot of different things. You can be metaphysical. It can be personal, personal struggles that people are having. But one of the things that's different about Love Chaos is going to be that people do not have to identify as
Hmm.
being an addict. People do not have to identify as having an issue.
It
I
is, yeah, it's very jarring to have to announce that before a uh, true, epiphany of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it,
in those programs, yeah.
it's jarring, but it also too, I think one of the things that I found with being participating in group work was just how beneficial it is for people. And I feel like, why do people have to have a problem in order to experience this? Like, why? I mean, people, everyone should be having the opportunity to have really authentic, genuine group experiences with each other. Like, why do you have to, like, I have to have a problem, I have to have a trauma, I have to have an addiction, I have to have this in order to have a real genuine experience with other human beings in this kind of way? And I think that it why not just open it so that people, I mean, if you are struggling with these things, this is what the groups are for. But if you simply want to participate and want to grow and be like a better human being without having to say, like, well, I'm an addict, or I struggle with this or with that, um, you should have that opportunity to participate, and it's it's something that, the meetings will be guided by the principles of Love Chaos, primarily just because of me. But whoever participates in it, they don't have to be following the path of Love Chaos. It's open to everyone, and
Right.
so, I wanted it to be really open to everyone, and having that kind of be the thing, because really a lot of times with peer-to-peer support groups, it's like everyone's about identifying with people with the exact same issue. Like, I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to be in a meeting with crystal meth addicts.
Right. Or there's like some hierarchy imposed or
Oh,
something.
that
Yeah.
especially too. Yeah.
Well, and this is it's funny we share this very much, with the work with We the Hallowed, and like asking people to submit and stuff. It was always about, like, and I'm going to use the C word, forgive me, but it was like, this idea of a community of disparate artists, right? It wasn't
Right.
like
Right.
the only tether was the want to kind of investigate metaphysical ideas for through their art or whatever. That was it. It had nothing to do with, like, creating a current, or like, imposing some sort of tenant that was very rigid or anything. And so I always love this, and I think both of us are gonna forever kind of tangle with this idea that it can happen. You can have a group of harmonious individuals that are completely themselves.
Right.
you know?
Right.
Like, that's the idea,
Yeah.
but
No.
it's also sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh no. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I was gonna change the subject a little bit if you had something.
Oh yeah. One thing that I noticed about when I got into the occult world was this idea that people were really, really um, big on being themselves, right? And really want, like, I like that. I was like, here, this is, a lot of people who are just doing their own thing, and and not feeling the need to fit in. And certainly there are elements of people wanting to fit in and be a part of something, for sure, But for the most part, what I felt early on in my experiences with the occult, and then continue to feel that way, is that most people who are into the occult are real outsiders in a lot of ways, and they really do want to do their own thing, and I think that's cool, and at the same time they want to connect with other people, and have some connection, and again, like, yeah,
There's both.
there's a lot of egos, there's a lot of phoniness, there's a lot of bullshit in the occult world,
Well,
and
there's a big upheaval too about creating your own thing. A lot of it is, here are these tried and true, testaments of practice. Like, don't fuck with them, just keep them going. Which,
right. Well, I think
you know,
yeah, I think that's to be expected. I think it's because it's a reaction to chaos magic. I
Mhm.
think that in recent decades, there's been this sort of turn towards tradition and
Chaos
what,
magic even became a tradition, you
right?
know?
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's
It's
certainly yeah, it's something that it's like postmodernism, it's like what do you do after postmodernism? And so it's like, a lot of people just go back to like old ways of doing things.
Mhm.
And, I think that, but just going back to what you were talking about with in terms of creating a community, right? Which again, like the C word, was not something that I liked before, and I've grown to like now. Um, but I think we we can grow together. We don't have to. We don't have to sell ourselves short. We don't have to be sellouts in order to connect with other people. We don't have to sell our souls to other people, to institutions or to organizations or to anything. We can still be true individuals and find our human family, the greater family.
Yeah.
And I think that to me, like 20 years ago, I wouldn't have believed that, but nowadays I do. And I think that I think there's some real value, to people wanting to connect.
You had mentioned, and to kind of circle around, and then I've been really bad with considering the chat, so we'll do that after this. But I think
Oh
this is
yeah,
a
I forgot about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is a perfect roundabout about you saying that, service was so important to your recovery and stuff. And I feel like service is important to your magical practice too. Thus the books,
Yes.
thus the dialogues, thus the thus love chaos. And I was wondering, like, yeah, when does that become uh, uh, amorphous enough to allow others to kind of come in and come out, and instead of just kind of waiting at the lunch line and no one wants your chili. You know what I mean?
So you're saying,
So, like, service is very important, and you've instituted yourself in a serviceable arena within, like, your recovery and your somatic self.
right,
when
right.
when does love chaos become, like, it just paramount to doing it, to being serviceable of the metaphysical?
Well, certainly. I mean, I think being in service to other people is really key. I think it is something that is certainly not uh, 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 exclusive to love chaos at all whatsoever. I think that's the thing that you can find in most traditions and most belief systems, most religions, most spiritual practices, is this idea, this notion of helping out other people, and as a way to help yourself, and I really feel that, that there's a reason for that, and why that is so commonly found in from belief system to belief system, is that it's part of who we are. Um, if we look back at our ancestors, we survived by working together against animals that were far more, fiercer than we were, and stronger, faster, whatnot. And if we had just been a isolated group of people and not worked with each other, we wouldn't be here where we are right now. We would have died off. And so I think that's a really common thing. I think in terms of love chaos, uh, is that is this idea that since the love cast is so, I really try hard not for, I don't want it to be dogmatic. I want a lot of freedom for people. Um, but the no, real notion of love, I think, in a lot of times, love is a feeling, but it's an action, and one of the best ways for love to be acted is by helping other people. And through the actions of helping other people, you're making love a reality and not just a feeling and not just an idea.
Right, that's beautifully poignant. I'm gonna unfortunately try to go through the chat and look at things that have.
Sure, I'm curious who's there.
Oh, there was Michelle Embry, Navie Alora. Navie, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Jonocide was here. We had Sam Shadow, Helen Dion.
Oh,
Amanda
okay.
Pomander. Like it's been pretty active, and I'm terrible at checking.
Yeah,
I get
that's,
so enthused with the conversation that I forget.
I know it's
But
all right. Yeah, Helen Dion, that's my son's mom.
oh, beautiful!
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I invited people that I know to check it out if they wanted to. So I was curious.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and she said she had to leave, but she said thanks, Derek, for sharing and your wisdom. Peace out.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've known her for a long time,
that's
20,
really sweet. Yeah,
23 years. Yeah, we've gone through a lot.
that's amazing. Uh, yeah, and then like I feel terrible going back to points that we made, 30 minutes ago. But let's
Yeah,
see.
it's okay.
The pursuit of authenticity is a worthy venture, says Navier. Navier. I feel terrible if I'm mispronouncing that.
I wonder who that
Uh,
is.
yeah.
Nuvier.
Um, and then there was some good ones. Sam had a really sweet thing saying Derek has a good way of looking at, what you were talking about with hexes, and that hexes have their place, but they shouldn't be something people do for petty reasons. Which, yeah,
Right, right.
yeah, and then everyone says, oh, Nisha's here,
Onish,
Josh
yeah,
Pablo. Um,
cool.
yeah, so if any of you in the chat have anything to ask Mr. Derek Hunter about Love Chaos, about his new grimoire, The End of the World, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. We'll be kind of winding down here. I just want to say that, the being privy to the evolution of what Love Chaos has been in print has been, one of my great uh how do I put it? Not achievements, because it makes it sound like I did a lot of work, but it's been one of my great uh I don't know, collaborations of somebody's really good work, and I want to thank you very much for allowing me to write the forwards for the last two books. It's been truly an honor. Let's just say that. How's that?
Well, really, to be honest with you, Keats, and you know this from when I met you in person, you and Mary at that deli,
Mm-hmm.
which my former student. So for people who know, Keats and I and Mary met downtown LA, and at a deli where one of my former students, a guy who had committed murder as a teen, had spent I think 15 years in prison and come out, and he found a job working at a deli in downtown LA, and I decided that we could have a meal there, the three of us. And at that time in my life, I was telling Keats that I didn't think I actually wanted to write this book, not this current book, but the one that came out last year, Love, Chaos, and Theory and Practice, because at the time I felt it was just too self-helpy, too straightforward, too simple. Just I just didn't feel it at the time, and it. I don't know. I think I just needed to have someone like yourself be able to say that to, and get your response to that, and just even seeing the look on your face, I could see that it was something that there was some disappointment
This is
when I
just
was,
sheer horror. Yeah, just
and in so many ways, you've been a big part of this last couple of years of Love Chaos, really, developing and growing and finding a way to express itself in a really a really how could I say a real way that it can reach other people, and it really way to make it a real thing, and not just something that was in my head that I had some ideas about, but it was actually something that could be real for other people. And that's why I turned to you both the last time and this time, is that, like, you know uh there's I honestly cannot think, of anyone else that would be a better person to be associated with these books, honestly, and it's like, uh, if I was a world famous like author and had access, and like any writer wanted to write a forward to my book, I honestly don't think that anyone else would be better than you. And a lot of it has to do with our relationship and our
right.
friendship. And for me, friendship is very valuable, and it's something that I learned from my dad, but also friends that I have, is that it grows over time. and that real true friendship is something that that evolves and has ways of uh, uh, of connecting. And I think that it's our relationship is not just a professional one or a creative one. It's a personal one, you know. And I think that really is what makes your input into Love Chaos really really important, you know. And um, just going back to like what you talked about at the beginning and what I talked about is living a life of authenticity. And for me, I want to surround myself or spend time with people who are authentic, who are interesting, and you are one of those people, you know. And I love people who are going to give me something, not in terms of what I'm going to get out of them, in terms of like a career or status or money, but what I'm going to get out of them in terms of their spirit and their character and their personality. And you know, again, going back to my dad, you know, he taught me that. He died poor. You know,
Mm.
he died because he couldn't afford health insurance. This was before Obamacare, of a brain aneurysm that he would have survived from if he had medical attention, you know. But he died poor, but he was a really happy dude. And he
Mm.
was happy because he made his life rich, and he made his life rich with his interactions with other people. And I'm still learning to be as genuine as he was. And you know, again, it's just, you know, your participation in these books and me knowing you has been really key in me continuing to be motivated to do these things. Um,
Ditto.
you know,
Absolutely ditto. Also,
yeah,
you know, like to me, like Love Chaos is the definition of Pragmagick. That's like exactly what I had been talking about or
it's
like
very similar. Yeah,
thinking about. You know what I mean? It's the,
right.
but
It
also like you
also,
and Derek, I celebrate you just as a human being. Like I talk about you all the time as one of the few that dips into this shit, you know, creates something as wondrous and thorough as this, but also, you know, walks the walk. You you literally help, you know, people, you know, day to day. It's not just some afterthought, you know, after
right.
I don't know. To me that's like that's something I aspire to, absolutely. So it's been my pleasure.
Well, I think you're about to you're already well, you already have been embarking on that in your own path, but you're gonna, I think, in your own way, what you're now doing with divergent magic is something that is going to be a crystallization of your ideas and your experiences. You know, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to do with that. I really enjoyed what you started with that.
Thank you. I'm gonna blame you if it totally tanks and
Yeah, please do.
no, but yeah, that's, you know, I think about you a lot when it comes to that because this divergent magic is absolutely about like, you know, dealing with, you know, addiction and redemption and brain chemistry, all of these, you know, kind of spirits that we kind of have to commune with. And I pick up a lot of that from Love Chaos in the sense that it's not about banishing, it's about being in Congress, you know.
Right, right.
And I think
Definitely,
that's the
definitely,
most important thing for sure. Well,
definitely.
I do want to mention though, Josh Pablo says that they're celebrating 9 months of sobriety today,
Oh,
and
nice.
and he says that you are one of the people I've looked up to throughout my life.
Wow. Oh, Josh. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, Josh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's he. Yeah. No, he's you know, amazing, amazing human being, and he is a really strong human being, and someone that, you know, has meant a lot to me. He is basically like a son to me. You know, I've been there for him. He is my son's older brother, and I've known him and his sister since they were one. I met them on their first birthday.
oh, that's
Turn-
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a great guy, very talented, and whatever he decides to do with his life, I know he's going to be amazing, and I'm really uh, glad to be a part of his life, and I'm really happy that he's doing really well right now in his life.
Josh, that's it's good to meet you, and like yeah, you couldn't have a better guiding light, honestly. Niche says this is why I totally admire Derek. Uh,
Oh,
So
I love
it's
me
just a
too.
love
Hey.
fest.
Oh, right. You guys are making me blush.
Oh, with that said, the book is available on Amazon. I'll put a link in the chat, or at least in the you know the info of the video. What's coming up next, Eric? Obviously, there's the Love Chaos group that you're going to start in August.
Yes, yes. Well,
Is there
so
anything else?
well, yeah, definitely for people, check out the book. It's super cheap. You can get the print book at $6. Kindle is 99 cents. I'm not looking to make money off this thing. All my books are on Kindle for 99 cents, including the book for $50, which has had to be $50 because it's big and got pretty pictures in it. You know, um, so I really do encourage people. So people watching this, whether it's now or in the future, if you practice magic, I really want people to start to consider, our window of opportunity for surviving as a species is getting smaller and smaller year by year. And, it's just, start thinking about, well, I have my magical practice. How could I possibly use it in a way where I could, do my part to, work with spirits, work with entities, or whatever you do to try to influence the possibility that we will survive and evolve too. Um, so this is it's a very personal book. It's very much about my own practice and my own, again, all the details that go into it, all the things that go into it, my own way of being. So it's very personal, but it also is, to me, in a good way, preachy and trying to get people to act, to do something, and I think it can open a lot of doors too in terms of what people can do with magic, so that it can, uh, it really hopefully will encourage people to explore that. So that's really I'm hoping the book will do. So in addition to the book, will be these Love Chaos groups on Zoom, and I'll be announcing that there'll be probably twice a month, every other week. So for each kind of meeting, it'll be once a month. So I'll be doing that, and I'll be telling the details about the when and the where and how very soon, but they will start in August. And again, everyone is invited. You can check it out. You don't have to have a problem. You don't, but if you do, you're more than welcome. It's for everybody, and I think that human beings, we now more than ever have the need to connect, because we're now isolating from each other, and we need to find ways to connect. And these Love Chaos groups just provide another avenue for connection for people.
And I think this is a prime example of what I've been railing against with the idea of therapy and people that haven't gone through the muck and mire telling you how to, tune or normalize. And I have yet to meet someone as fervently experienced or fervently honest, whilst being completely unjudgmental as Derek Hunter. So I love you, Derek. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Keith. That's very, very sweet of you to say that. Thank you. And I
Well,
love you
I'm
too.
just a sweet tart.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a part of this. I'll have the audio podcast out soon. Please, I put in the chat, check out his book. I put Love Chaos in the chat as well. Check out the website. And yeah, uh, with that said, thank you for such a wonderful end to my Sunday. And haunt on.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much.